say you want to develop a tech company, and you might not know what you want to, or you might have a certain field that you might want to get into. You can say, well, hey, let me see what research is been done out there right now. Maybe through NASA, they might have something that's we can develop. We can expedite the product development process by taking advantage of some researched technology, incorporating it into a product that we had, and working with them to get it fast tracked into something that can be delivered to the public. That's that type of partnership does exist, and can be taken and can be involved in by someone who has a company that's looking to do that.
Hey, it's Recruitment, Space and Equity. We're all about increasing assets and creating new space. Here today to meet with family. So, Mr. Darian Robbins of NASA. He's an environmental project engineer. I love saying you're definitely the first engineer on. I don't know about the first engineer, but definitely the first NASA associate that we've had on here. So, Darian, it's a pleasure to have you.
Well, I'm glad to be on here. It's an honor to be able to talk with you.
Absolutely. So we don't get it in Space and Equity. The objective is right there in our tagline. We're increasing assets and creating new space because we believe that true freedom for anybody is economic freedom. Mm-hmm. And that comes in so many different avenues. And it obviously we preach ad nauseum that it's not just through sports and entertainment.
Right.
Not many people, not many African Americans take the field or the route that you've taken. And I would say in this generation, perhaps in previous generations, but not in this generation where folks are in the engineering field and working in NASA. So tell me about, when did you have that, this is what I want to do with my life?
Let's see. I think it happened really for me early on. I've always been interested in science and technology even when I was younger. So so even at a early age, I was playing with Legos, reading science and science books and that kind of thing, thinking about the future as well. And through that, became interested in space. So, started getting more into like America's space program, or NASA specifically. So, and following that, or learning about that from the first rockets that we shot up to all the way up to the space shuttle. I think when NASA started utilizing the space shuttle, that's probably when my interest kind of really started peaking in that field. And so, at one point in time, I wanted to be an astronaut. So, that, being in tune to, technology, and particularly like NASA, that really happened from a very early age on. And I just happened to be lucky enough, and also having an opportunity to be able to now follow through with that aspect. I'm not an astronaut, but I can say I do work on some things that we put in space to be able to help and benefit humanity overall, but definitely looking towards uncovering and discovering scientific phenomenon, and also creating new technologies that will help us do just that, discover information and help people and expand our learning of the world that we live in and the universe that we live in as well.
So I've got two follow-up questions in regards to that. When NASA began, was the function an element of defense from a military perspective? And then what has it grown since then? And then tell us about the connection to Hidden Figures as far as your family is concerned.
Okay, well, in my opinion, I would say yes, that, definitely the military played a big part in terms of the portions that we think about NASA as far as, human space flight is concerned. We were, in a race at that point in time to beat the Russians to this new field or this new area of space, whether it's, putting up satellites, whether it's finding out more information, whether it was to put humans into space. So we actually, there was I think, in my personal opinion, a military component to it that was what drove its, the accomplishments that we, are really think about with NASA when we talk about, human space flight, putting men on, or mankind on the moon. So, and I think, some of the first rockets that carried human beings were actually, derivatives of rockets that were intercontinental ballistic missiles. So you can, that's almost a direct military, alignment right there. You know what I mean? So yes, so personally, and so let me also say, I'm not speaking on behalf officially of anything officially at NASA in that capacity, but for my own study, I do think that, there was a military component that played in part to its development of its more well-known accomplishments as far as, human space flight and space travel is concerned. Now, as far as what NASA has evolved to now, it is something, but also even in the past, because part of its past too was also the aviation aspect. It looked at ways of being able to improve just flight in general here on Earth and other aspects of it. That's also a component that mixed into it. But going forward, and even to now's the time frame, it's grown to not just encompass human space flight, but a lot of aspects of cosmology, astronomy, still, research in aviation and development in aviation, but also looking out into the universe and trying to understand scientific and physical phenomena, and how can we capture that data, whether it be through pictures or just through numbers, and then bring it back for scientists to be able to evaluate and tell us more about the universe. So that's kind of like, to me, where NASA is now. It covers a wide range of things, not just putting human beings into space. It's about putting, developing technology, but also using that technology to explore the world around us, whether it be the planet itself or looking out towards the cosmos and understanding the phenomenon that's going on out there. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a second question too. What you were asking about how it relates to hidden figures, correct?
Yes, correct.
So actually, one of the things that I found out is that our family, I believe, excuse me, let me, and I might have this right. My sister would definitely know or have this correctly, but Dr. Catherine Johnson was actually a good friend of my grandparents. I think they went to the same church, operated or engaged each other in the same circles. And also from what I understand, when the movie came out, my grandparents were able to go to a screening for the family there. That's how close they were to them. That really took me by surprise. I didn't know that at the time until, I actually, talked to my grandmother, and I was like, I asked her, like, why did you never tell me about this before? But one of the things that she told me was that she didn't, even though she knew Mrs. Johnson, she didn't fully know exactly what she did at NASA at that point in time. I guess, it's because, people don't, always be in each other's business. Yeah. But I think it also kind of talks to at that point in time, the what she was doing had a strategic purpose to it as well. So she might not have been at liberty to say, hey, well, we're working on technology to put people in space, you know what I'm saying? And again, in context of that being that we're also racing against, the Soviet Union to do the same thing. So she probably wasn't in a position to just talk about what she did with just anyone. I'm not sure if it was, totally secret, but I'm sure there's a strategic portion to it where they were encouraged not to, fully tell, everybody what they're doing. That's my assumption. I don't have any, anything to substantiate that, but I'm just, making some assumptions from my understanding of that time frame and what they were trying to do. So,
yeah. You were a kid. You dreamt of being an astronaut. Not many kids. It's challenge we have in our community. I wouldn't say a challenge, but an opportunity. I don't like saying that we can't do this, we can't do that. But you dreamt of being an astronaut. There's And now you're working at NASA, you're an engineer, you're working on critical projects that have impact on the world at large. And I would argue that it's more feasible for you to dream in that capacity than every kid to dream to be an athlete or a pro football player, basketball player. How has STEM helped the Black community enhance engineers, mathematicians, science-related artisans, for lack of a better term, and what can it do better?
Let's see. Well, the one thing that you're going to find, or the one thing that I found, and I think Hidden Figures is a good example of that, is that Black folks were always there in the mix of it, of the technology aspect. You know what I'm saying? It's just that the story wasn't always told. You know what I mean? So definitely when Hidden Figures came out, you start seeing other stories come about of Black people in these technological positions over time and their contributions, because people, because then people start looking at analogous occurrences of these things, like, oh yeah, that person was there and they developed this thing. Oh, and that person was there and developed this thing. There just wasn't a platform maybe that like exists now to be able to tell those stories. And so now, with the advent of the internet and other things like that, there's platforms to be able to reach people now, and also to tell these stories and present them in a way where people can get that information and consume it for themselves and realize, oh yeah, we did have positions in there. And if now in the past, in terms of STEM before, in my personal opinion, if there was, I would contribute more of participation from Black people in these things to be more. I would attribute the lack of more to be due to opportunity, due to racism personally, or prejudice. But I think now, we're working towards, again, with the availability of different platforms and different ways to be able to reach kids now, to be developing these programs now where we now can reach kids at these levels, and with these stories, and say, hey, it's not, and there's nothing against athletes or in that aspect, but there's probably a better chance of you, if you're looking to, let's say, to succeed or to do or engage in a line of work where you do some benefit and also can reap some financial reward, you might have a better opportunity in these STEM fields than you would from the numbers of just trying to be an athlete and try to make it to the league. You know what I mean? But then also too, with that as well, we talk about sports and that kind of stuff, there's other things, other ways to be able to utilize STEM related things or jobs that might be related to, let's say, the league. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking, even though we're talking sports, you're talking numbers, you're talking stats. You know what I'm saying? There's jobs where all that some people will take the numbers from those games, crunch those numbers, and look at ways of who's the best person to put in this position, who's the, that flow into decision making. You know what I'm saying? Behind that stuff, those numbers, or those organizations' numbers, is STEM activities to come to those things. So, it's about, so one of the things to engage these kids is to show, okay, you might not be on the field, but you can there's other things outside that you can make contributions to the field that are STEM related, and still, be a part of that industry. But also too, there's other, if you're not even a part of that industry, there's still other ways to, you can have a good job or an interesting job, even going through other STEM routes or STEM related careers. So that's just my, kind of my opinion on it.
Piggyback on what you just said about STEM as it pertains to sports these days. It used to be that GMs, coaches came from the playing ranks on a more regular basis. And then with Moneyball, with people utilizing analytics, now it's got to the point that coaching decisions have been trickled into analytics having a huge influence. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes another rationale for not having Black coaches, who are the majority of the NFL and the NBA, is that, hey, they don't have this analytics background that these Harvard grads have, that these MIT grads have. And so we still can tackle it from that angle too. Okay, we have STEM now. So how do we, the challenge is this: they need to see more Darians of the world. It's regular, like for you, talking about space programs, and I want you to get into some of the projects that you guys can share, whether that be I believe it's the Webb projects. I would love to hear from you. How do we make that more front of mind, if you will, for kids, so they could see that I can see myself in this scenario?
Let's see. So how to, I guess you're kind of asking how do we present this way to want to be able to reach kids more? I think it's a couple different ways. One of the ways I think you can reach them, and I know reach me, is I'll say, like, science fiction, you know what I'm saying? Or, or even for me, like even comic books, you know what I'm saying? Those were things where, I'm a big Star Wars fan, you know what I'm saying? So part of that too was, even though we don't always have a great representation, in those things initially, for example, like Star Trek, you did have a Lieutenant Uhura, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Who for me, even with, with that, showed, okay, in the future, there's Black folks who are going to be in there and a contributing part of the team, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they're, for me, they were in space, so that's all you needed to tell from me, you know what I'm saying? So I think that there's a concept that I like to call visualization to actualization. And that's where, even in a place where something might not actually exist, if you take the time to create the visual of it, you know what I'm saying, that in itself can help spark in some people's minds, oh, well, okay, if I had no concept of myself in a certain area, you know what I'm saying, or doing a certain thing, once I kind of, see it in a certain format or maybe draw it, you know what I'm saying, it starts turning your mind onto that, well, and say, well, if I was there, what would I do? How would I act in that aspect? What do I need to get to that position? You know what I'm saying? It starts it's sparking things in your own mind of how to be able to make something become real. And so, again, getting back to these, the stories or this information about, whether things that people exist, who have existed, or even characters sometimes that are fictional, they can be utilized to spark that desire of, well, maybe I could see myself doing that in the near future, or looking out and say, is there anybody out there that's doing that now? How can I maybe possibly connect with them to find out, or maybe even, whether it be from a mentor standpoint, or just, being able to consume some material that describe their process, that person or that child or whoever can take it and read and say, oh, there's a pathway for that, or I can see how I can get from point A to point B to get to that end result. So that's how I see. I think it's a mixture of, uncovering the stories that already exist. Also, at the same time, developing stories, whether it be fictional, of, where you might want to be at, or where you think, let's say Black people should be in certain things. You know what I'm saying? And particularly in STEM or science and related fields. Seeing that is the start of the actual path, in my opinion.
Seeing it, incubating it, encouraging it. So I've got to imagine that visualization to actualization, we on campuses, the HBCU campuses, I would argue, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but I imagine we'll have the stats by the time we post this podcast, that scientists, engineers, physicians, attorneys, the percentage that come from HBCUs as compared to traditionally, historically white institutions. So let's say you take 100 from historically white institutions, 100 students from HBCUs. The percentage of those that go into those fields, science, STEM to begin with, I think is going to be higher. And the reason I'm making that anecdotal argument is that it's incubated, it's encouraged, it's fostered. You can do that when you're in these spaces. I know that, I went to school with a few people that went to med school. They went Morehouse, Meharry, that route. There were some that went to Ohio State University but most went that route. And I believe there was a reason for it. With that, we have the field of the boardroom. You're going to be a participant in that, and a speaker in that. And the idea is to put together government stakeholders, corporate stakeholders with young Black entrepreneurs, young African-American entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs of any hue that want to be in a place where they can be encouraged and also network. Can you tell us when the government, you're a government agent, for lack of a better term, when the government wants to seek out its talent, how do they go about networking, and how do events like this help proliferate talent?
So as far as seeking out talent, I think it has to come from development of relationships with universities. And they have to be, and I say from the government institutions, they have to be intentional about it. So, if you're looking to increase the amount of Black engineers or scientists, I would say that organization has to intentionally go to, schools and HBCUs specifically to look for those. You know what I'm saying? Also to any institution, you're gonna have to be intentional about it, because the talent exists there. You know what I'm saying? I know for myself, because I went to a predominantly white institution. You went to UMBC. One of the reasons that I was able to connect and get the job that I had at NASA was for couple of reasons. For one, I participated in a scholarship program called the Meyerhoff Scholarship Program, which was geared towards focusing on African Americans, getting them into STEM related majors, as far as particularly math, science, biology, engineering, but with the intention of pushing them to get their doctorate in these degrees, in these areas. I don't have my doctorate, so I didn't fully follow through. But one of the things that scholarship did is that it had a relationship with it established a relationship with the current center that I work at. And I was able to get an internship there during my college career. And so once I got in, and started working with them, I just, I found what I liked to do, and we developed a good rapport, a good working relationship, even at the undergraduate level, such to the point where I would work summers, and anytime they would allow me to come there. And so by the time I finished my undergrad degree, they said, well, look, we have a position open for you here in the government to come work. And also what I like to think that it also helped do, what that relationship also did, and not just me, but there's other folks, there's other classmates and those within that scholarship who took advantage of that, but they performed so well in those positions that now those organizations were like, we want more of you. You got a couple more that are like you, that are coming out of this program, or have that type of focus, or that drive, or because I think because of that relationship and the performance of the participants, of the kids that participated with in that relationship, they saw that they're turning out quality, in my case, engineers, you know what I'm saying, and scientists, that they can say, hey, we can put you in these positions, you can handle this work, you can innovate. We trust you with this, so we know you can do the work, we know you're capable. But I think that would have not come, maybe I want to say not come about, because even when I got in there, there's other Black engineers who were there that I was able to connect with and to mentor me through that process, or in that organization, but it starts this kind of thing starts creating a pipeline now, right? So now it's not one of the things you mentioned before about, so even when, technology or science, becomes more involved in, let's say, certain areas of certain industries, you know what I'm saying? You're not going to be able to say, oh, well, because you don't know this new thing, or you don't have the thing, you're not qualified to make an attempt to do that. No, there's a pipeline now of people with degrees, with this understanding, you know what I'm saying, that's coming out now that should put them in line with whatever technological change that comes about or affects an industry now. You know what I'm saying? The only reason, in my opinion, that if you don't see, a good amount of people of color is because you're not looking for them. That's my opinion. And if you're having trouble, you know what I'm saying, please come to me. I can probably get you 5 or 6 resumes by tomorrow, you know what I'm saying, of people who could qualify for your position. That's what I'm saying. I think institutions, organizations, and companies have to be intentional about that, to seek out these people to fill these positions in these roles. They are out there. I firmly believe they're out there. But also at the same time, we need to keep what we're doing in terms of, in my opinion, increase the amount of students who are following in these pathways, these STEM pathways to these careers, if they want to be a part of it. I'm not the type. I'm always not the type of person to say, okay, you got to be STEM, you got to do this, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I think people need to, find the things that they want to do and be able to pursue that. But I also don't want people who or Black kids or kids of color who do want to be engineers and be in these STEM programs to not be prevented from and encouraged to take up these or try to even take up and try to learn these skills to be in these jobs or just in these technological industries.
The truth of the matter is, you just shared that you got to where you were through a network. Mm-hmm. You were, and now created the pipeline. And the reality is, everything of value, of importance, happens that way through a network. So it's our job to make that bridge exist and occur, because we just think like, wait, I applied, my resume fits, and then we don't know why it doesn't happen, but it's because they don't know to go see these individuals. They don't know Darian Robbins is at NASA. They don't know that Ed Carbo works at Google as a senior driver of his cars. They don't know that Tosin Duratoya is been a woman in African tech. Wow. Once they know who she is, then once they know that Dr. Robbins is not only is she Darian's little sister, but she also is a mathematician at, one of the largest insurance firms in the world.
Yep.
But we're and that's been the difference. It's not necessarily been strictly a form of racism that's kept us out. It's been not being in the right networks.
I agree with that too.
We are going to continue to do this and make sure that kids are aware, this is who I need to talk to. I've learned somebody else that can get me to the space that I want to get to before I came to this event. So we are, yep. This is something that you're going to be joining us in February, which is Black History Month. It's President's Day weekend, so it's a long weekend, Charlotte, North Carolina, at JW Marriott. We really want to make sure that kids that want to take advantage, that are already in this space, already tech entrepreneurs, know somebody else's name that can get them in the door, but otherwise they wouldn't have had access.
Awesome.
So can you tell us about, before we get into the music, tell us about the James Webb project and how does that impact my life or the non-engineer's life?
Okay, James Webb Space Telescope, which is probably December, went up in December, is one of the largest in-space telescope, if not the largest, if I remember correctly, telescope that's is looking out at the universe and various aspects. it was a long time coming. I mean, we're talking about a project that literally was about 20 to 25 years old in terms of from its inception to the time it actually flew and has now been deployed. In my opinion, now you're asking about the relation to the everyday man, which is great, you know what I'm saying? Because this is one of the things I think is a great thing about NASA. So one of the things I think how it will help the common man is that, one, I think if anything, it's going to be one of the tools that we're going to find out if we are truly alone in this universe. So, you know, it's going to answer to me, it'll answer that one of the instruments that will answer that question. So, you know, with some of its power that we have right now, it will help us understand, you know, how the universe came to be, maybe even discover some new things that might tell us something that we never knew about how the universe itself developed. It also has the possibility of, you know, finding planets that might possibly support life. So those, to me, those are the larger things it has to do. But from a technological standpoint, NASA has this thing where when it develops technology, it has this thing what is called technology transfer. So it will, you know, as new tech that gets developed, it gets offered up for companies and organizations to come take advantage of and say, hey, here's the technical data that we know that we've developed here. Do you think someone might come and say, hey, I think I might be able to apply this to something, a product, or something in the regular public that might engage in. So, for example, I'm not sure if it was with the JW project, but there's I'm aware of a couple of things where companies have used like some of the algorithms that have controlled the optics of like telescopes. They've used those same algorithms to control instruments that help with like eye surgeries or identifying certain maybe ailments with, you know, dealing with the eyes, as well as other biological things that happen with our bodies as far as detection or visualization. That's just like one small part, you know what I'm saying? So I think, you know, with James Webb being probably one of the most advanced satellites and or telescopes that mankind has put together and put in orbit, there's going to be technology, whether it be on the software side or on the hardware side, that's been developed that a company or someone could say, hey, I think I can make a product out of that could help the everyday life that you're aware of, or just maybe help some process that we, that we involve ourselves in every day. You know, something out of that development somebody's going to look at that technology and say, hey, I can make something out of that. And NASA, if you can apply to work with NASA, they'll help you in that development to basically bring that technology on home to you in some capacity. So I think that's how projects like this get back to the regular person, aside from answering those larger questions about our presence in this universe and how we came to be on a physical and a scientific aspect, and also the possibility of if there's other places like Earth or even life on other planets. So those are kind of the larger questions, but getting down to even just the everyday thing, there's technology there that can be repackaged and reused can be used in our everyday lives.
So you're saying, in addition to answering these huge questions, it can become drilled down to like a public-private partnership where SpaceX says, hey, we want some of this data for what we're doing. And how often do you see that take place? How often does NASA partner with private sector?
I would say, yeah, I don't have any numbers, you know what I'm saying? I don't have any direct, direct numbers of it, but but I know that there's an office that's just dedicated just to that, you know, taking that technology and shopping it to, organizations, to people or whatever, you know what I'm saying? There's a whole process that they have set up in a whole office that's solely dedicated just to that. And so, and I don't have the website, but there's a website you can go on. You can look through NASA technology and patents that you can apply to, to use your business or your organization to use. There's a whole process to it where it can happen. So, I think they're pretty keen on that, because I think, one of the things that people ask is that you're spending all this money, what I'm saying? What really comes out of it that really affects my life? I think they're really, I like to think they're really keen on trying to find partnerships to be able to take that technology and bring it to that one. So like I said, I don't have any numbers on it specifically. I do know there's an organization, I can probably look it up and get you that, information. So maybe you can, we can flash that website to there. If someone is interested to see what patents and technology that NASA has developed, that they're saying, hey, to the general public, please come take a look at this. Can you do something with this? And get that process started. So, one of the things that you're mentioning about opportunities for people in the business aspect. So let's say you want to develop a tech company, and you might not know what you want to, or might have a certain field that you might want to get into. You can say, well, hey, let me see what research is been done out there right now, maybe through NASA. They might have something that's we can expedite the product development process by taking advantage of some researched technology, incorporating it into a product that we have, and working with them to get it fast tracked into something that can be delivered to the public. That's that type of partnership does exist, and can be taken and can be involved in by someone who has a company that's looking to do that.
So when you were younger, you were a Trekkie. You told us you were a Trekkie. What were you into when you were watching Star Trek?
Well, let's see. Yeah, let's see. Now, as far as the Trek, it would probably be more of the next generation. That was probably the one I was really centered around, even though I've seen the original. But yeah, during that time frame, I was primarily a hip hop head. So think anything hip hop, late 80s to early 90s, or even up into mid 90s. I was pretty much up on. So
all right. So when I got to college, all the people from the DC, Baltimore area, first you knew exactly where they're from once they started talking. Is it Charlie? All the line dances and the stepping. I was like, do y'all go to practice this thing? Because there was full routines. You could tell. We just danced to the music. Y'all had the whole. It would take over the gym jam. How does that work? How does everybody in DC and Baltimore know? Hey, this is what we do. This is the routine. And even the folks who couldn't dance knew the routine.
Well, see, I'm not from DC or from Baltimore. You know what I'm saying? I come from the western part of that area. So, I was a little, I would say, coming into college, I pretty much had the same amazement that you had, you know what I'm saying? But what I can tell you is that there's a distinct difference between Baltimore and DC. in terms of musical taste and other things, you know what I'm saying? And cultures, you know what I'm saying? And let's say just in terms of the music, is that there are, if you're from Baltimore and you come up in certain cultures and the music surrounding it, you're gonna know certain dances and certain things to do when certain songs come on, you know what I'm saying? Because that's just how the culture is built, around, let's say, for Baltimore, like club music, you know what I'm saying? That's just that. The same thing with go-go from DC, you know what I'm saying? There was just certain things in terms of look, in terms of, like you said, of movement, of terminology, slang, whatever, that just that you understood was associated with that specific area, and also sometimes with that musical selection, you know what I'm saying? And it, if you, like myself, like I didn't come up in either one of those cultures, you know what I'm saying? But you can see that, yes, there's definitely a culture around it, and there's definitely there's definitely features to it that everybody in general just knows or accepts or has developed over time that they would learn if you came up in it. You know what I'm saying? But I definitely learned to do is to appreciate, both. You know what I'm saying? Both of the DC and also the Baltimore vibes getting there. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting. Like I think to be human is to experience some struggle, some strife. To be Black in this country, there's a unique connection. Even if you are not a descendant of slaves, you know the impact that has on how we live. Nevertheless, people love to rep where they're from. And there's something about, so if somebody, like I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, you can't talk nothing about Columbus, Ohio, even though I haven't been there since 1999. And if somebody from Michigan start talking about, I'm a trash them. What is that? And I think Michael Vick on his special, there was a Michael Vick special, one of those 30 for 30s, and he said something along the lines like, if you don't love where you're from, like you have no foundation. You can't pass go. You can't collect $200. What is that? I don't know why that you brought that up, because how there's a distinctness between Baltimore and between DC. And to me, it's just there's something prideful about where you're from. Close us out with that. Why is that so important to us as humans?
Because regardless, because it's where it's what partly what forms you. You know what I'm saying? You might not be, totally staked in the cultural aspects of where you come up in, because most times you might not have a choice in that aspect of where you come up at. But if you get to a point, in your life where, one, that you're happy with where you have, ended up, you know what I'm saying, or happy with yourself, you know what I'm saying, for better or for worse, you do recognize the location of where, who you are has been formed. That, you take some, sometimes you take a little bit of some pride in it, or you say, okay, this is kind of this is also part of what made me, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I wouldn't be who I am today if, I wasn't at this place, you know what I'm saying? And so, and like I said, some things are for are not always on, helpful, you know what I'm saying? But, if you do take pride sometimes in terms of where you come from, there has to be an aspect in there where you do recognize the good of what, living in a certain area or coming up a certain way did for your personality, you know what I'm saying? And the parts that were bad, that formulate bad parts, well, we ought to seek therapy about that. You know what I'm saying? And work those and try to find a way to work those out. And that's not something to say that, because I know some people where they come out, they had bad experiences and they don't want to, relive those or give those things crew. I'm not advocating for anybody to go above and beyond, a place or make light of a place or that, that has been hurtful to them. You know what I'm saying? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for those people who probably had good experiences or do take some pride in terms of where they came up or appreciation, you know what I'm saying? They, it's like part of it, they take it personal. You know what I'm saying? This is a part of who I am. You know what I'm saying? And if you say something about it, you're saying something about me. You know what I'm saying? And so that's where maybe it's that pride portion that comes into play in that aspect, because and some of that pride might be was like, well, my experience in this place wasn't so bad, you know what I'm saying? Or I had, whether it be due to privilege or just whatever, you know what I'm saying? You might have fonder recollections of how you came up and also of how those things formed who you are today and how you operate. And so to take someone to talk negatively about it or not to rep it in the way that you would, you might take some umbrage to that. So that's, I think, where some of that comes from.
Darren, I truly appreciate you giving us this time at the end of the day. It's not easy to do something at the end of the day, so I appreciate you. We respect that time that you gave us. Tell us if people want to check out your Black Panther NFT, if they want to learn more about the James Webb Project and what you have going on, Darian, how can they find you?
Well, you can find me. I have a website, artofdarian.com. You can look me up on Twitter or Instagram, Darian Robbins. Got the government up there. I am who I am. You know what I'm saying? So you can look me up on there as well. Same thing, Facebook. I have an Art of Darian site up there as well. I can get you the links to everything. You can post up there. That's where you can connect with me at, and we can feel free to reach out and let's network.
Absolutely. So you also be able to check Darian out at Field of the Boardroom 2, the Black Tech Series, Charlotte, North Carolina, February 17th through the 19th at the JW Marriott, downtown Charlotte. You can catch us on our website, spaceequitycorp.com, on IG, OB_empowers, also Space Equity Corp. We have a podcast. Like and subscribe to Become Correct podcast. You type in Space and Equity, you also get access to this, which is going to air next Thursday. Darian, we appreciate your time, man.
Thank you.